What's up, everybody? This is the SNS show. We got Sal and Sid two-time talk about a possibility of trading Brock Purdy, or is it off the table? What's up, everybody? There's some news out there today that the 49ers are being a little cheap when it comes to paying Brock Purdy. My question is, are the 49ers being cheap, or are they holding out to pay him because they're not exactly sure if he's worth what he's asking? I'm on the team of not paying him what he's asking. Let's hold off and hold him to the 45 million mark. Obviously, we've talked about this quite a bit. It seems like the 49ers are holding off. Is there a possibility that the 49ers could trade Brock Purdy? You know, an interesting thing came out of Pittsburgh today that, TJ Watt is moving on. It looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to move on from TJ Watt and save themselves $21 million. And that means that they could possibly trade him or cut him. And I like to believe that they're going to trade him before the draft or the draft day. The question is who do they trade him to? Who's an interesting trade partner? Here's one for you. What if the 49ers were to consider trading Brock Purdy for TJ Watt and maybe another pick or something like that? It sounds crazy, but it fits both teams in the sense that the Pittsburgh Steelers are in a big need at quarterback position, and the 49ers are in a big need for an edge rusher. Obviously, quarterback is a very important position. The 49ers can't live without one. But are there some answers outside of Brock Purdy for the 49ers? I think there are some. We can talk about that right now. Go ahead, Sid, and tell me what you think of a trade possibility for Brock Purdy.
Well, I think the 49ers are pretty clear on what they want to pay Brock Purdy. So I don't think a deal's happened yet because they're at a number and Purdy's at a number, and they're obviously just not on the same page. I think Purdy's still sticking to whatever is $55 million or above that. Who knows what the number is exactly, but I think it's a possibility that, it's a possibility that he gets traded if that number doesn't come down. I don't see the 49ers budging. I think they're actually going to hold to it, which is interesting because I wouldn't have expected that. So TJ Watt definitely is intriguing. If you trade TJ Watt for Brock Purdy and maybe get another pick out of Pittsburgh, a later round pick out of Pittsburgh, and like you said, it makes sense for both teams. I think Pittsburgh is a quarterback away, so Purdy could be their answer there. And I think the 49ers just need to reset if this doesn't work with Brock Purdy.
I think the thing that's really interesting is that the 49ers, being accused of being cheap, the owner even responded to it, which was pretty interesting. And he even mentioned that there isn't another guy in the draft that makes him feel like it's time to move on from Brock Purdy. So, everything points to the 49ers are going to sign Brock Purdy. But I'm going to stand still on this. If Brock Purdy is unwilling to settle at the amount that the 49ers are willing to pay, I don't think the 49ers are going to give in this time. You've seen them give in to Nick Bosa and Brandon Ayuk, and it's been a theme of this GM, or a lot of people seem to say that that's just what he does. Eventually he'll give in and pay out. I just feel like the Niners, it seems like this offseason, have made a decision that they're going young and they're going cheaper, or wiser, if you will. And they're not going to just fold to the player's expectations or, what he expects from the team. And I think the 49ers have made a stance here. And it's going to start with Brock Purdy. And then it looks like George Kittle could be the next guy that gets the same stance. I think that's a silly one. I think George Kittle is the type of player that you pay. It's like the same thing as Greenlaw. These are the type of players you want to build a roster around and you can win with for a very long time. Sure, Kittle's a little bit older, but he's this type of player like Kelsey. You just let him ride till the wheels fall off.
Yeah, I think trading George Kittle will just be too big of a loss for the Niners. He's clearly he's the superstar of the team. He's the guy that everybody loves and everybody gets along with. And taking his presence away from the field would just be too big of a hit. I don't care if he's a little bit older. He's still the number one tight end in the league, in my opinion. So I don't think trading George Kittle is an option. But it almost looks like the 49ers are open to do anything. If these rumors are coming out that Kittle could possibly be traded and replaced by a rookie, it's like, are they taking this get young thing extremely serious to the point where nobody's safe? I don't know, because if at the same time we're sitting here talking about the quarterback possibly getting traded. So if the quarterback's not safe, who really is safe? If you're willing to trade a quarterback that is a franchise quarterback in reality, then is it really that crazy to think about a tight end getting traded?
The thing that I read today, okay, the 49ers want a shot at Tyler Warren.
Mhm.
That is the driving factor for trading George Kittle. George Kittle's got 5 years, 4 years for sure, 5 years of still being that Pro Bowl elite tight end. He's going to do it for another 4 or 5 years. I believe that.
Oh,
Okay, so we're anxious at this point in time to get Tyler Warren. Is Tyler Warren a generational talent? Is he the type of guy that you just feel like you cannot live without? And you watch the film. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a top 10 pick in the NFL, and that's not a joke. But is he going to be like Brock Bowers and come in and do what Bowers did? I don't think so.
there's no guarantee.
There is
Even-
no guarantee either way, for sure.
Yeah.
You could argue one way or the other. I would say the easier way to argue is no, because that's the reality of this league. It's a lot harder to be good than it is the other way around. And so you're going to trade a George Kittle, who should be a Hall of Famer, maybe a first ballot Hall of Famer, and the type of guy that should just retire in that red jersey when it's all said and done, the same way Travis Kelce's been treated in Kansas City. 49ers should not shy away from paying George Kittle $20 million. They should not have shied away from paying Dre Greenlaw whatever he wanted. It was only $30 million on 3 years. You know, the 49ers cannot make the same mistake they did with Dre Greenlaw, moving away from players that you can win Super Bowls with. Don't kid yourself. These are Super Bowl type players. These are the type of players every team wishes they had. And you just don't move on from them. And the 49ers continually draft so well late, and then they lose these guys without re-signing them. You know, just this year alone, losing Dre Greenlaw, losing Hufanga, those are 2 great draft picks that we had. We get nothing in return, and they're gone. Let's not trade George Kittle just to get a Tyler Warren that I hate to say that we don't know he's going to be good. I'd like to believe we know he's going to be good, but we don't know he's going to be George Kittle.
Hey, Kyle
First
Pitts.
ballot Hall of Fame.
Look how we're talking about Kyle Pitts.
And that happens in the NFL. Kyle Pitts, he checks all the boxes, but for whatever reason on an NFL field, he can't do it.
Right. It happens more often than not. So, Okay, let's move into the next thing. We're hearing that the 49ers are possibly looking to make a splash trade. And we're hearing specifically the Las Vegas Raiders with the 6th overall pick. And the NFL, this comes from an NFL insider, and he also added that if they were to get the 6th overall pick, the prize would be looking at Mason Graham. So that's interesting. It's very different from what we're hearing about the George Kittle thing. It's the defensive tackle, which we both agree is the biggest need in the draft. So how bad would this be?
I like that. So what are they planning to give up for this 6th overall?
That's the big question.
Okay. I like the fact that the 49ers are putting defensive tackle as the top need, if this is true.
All right.
I'm not exactly sure on Mason Graham at number 6. And the thing that concerns me about Mason Graham is his weight and his arm length.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, he has great plays to show for, what he, his collegiate career. The plays exist. They're there. He's been a big time player for Michigan. My issue is we've seen time and time again that people struggle with short arms on offense and D-line. That's not to say that you cannot excel with 32-inch arms, but you're up against it and you're going to pick him 6th overall. Now, I could see why a team that's in that position to pick Mason Graham is trading out and trading back. I can understand why. Because I don't feel like there should be any doubt when you're taking players that high. The 49ers back in, I believe, 2017, which is the first year of this coaching staff along with the GM, John Lynch, they took a D tackle. Smaller guy, smart player. It's kind of similar. And how did he pan out?
Didn't work out.
It did not work out. And, he ended up going to the New York Jets and followed Robert Saleh there. But he's not the type of guy that's going to, he's a good player in the NFL in terms of like he'll have a long career, maybe like an 8-year career, 9-year career. It's just he's not a first round pick, and he's
Yeah,
definitely not a top 5 or top 10 pick. And 49ers can ill afford to make the same mistake.
yeah, it's weird. He reminded me a lot of Sullivan Thomas when I started watching him more and more. And it's a they both dominated in college, and
I'm
then
telling you, that's the player that comes to my mind when I see him.
100% because it's similar size, and what they're doing in college, it almost looks like it's weird. You could watch them do it in college, and it's almost like you could see it not translating to the NFL. You can see a lot of the plays Mason Graham makes just will not translate to the NFL. These O linemen are bigger, they're stronger, you're maybe playing like the O linemen get so much better when you come to the NFL, and if you don't have the size to fight against them, you're gonna feel it pretty quickly. He's not up against a lot of NFL linemen.
Right.
A lot of starters at least. So I don't like Mason Graham, especially. I don't like taking him at 6. I don't know how to feel about him. Even if he dropped to 11, I don't know how I feel about the Niners taking. To be honest, I think there's better defensive tackles that are going to go later.
Exactly. I don't think you invest that high in a Mason Graham. I think you just wait, even trade back, and get a guy like Kenneth Grant or
Walter
Nolan, and my favorite guy from Oregon. You could just wait.
Yeah, because now we're talking about trading up for a guy like.
No,
Mason
you don't
Graham.
trade up unless you know who you're getting. Like a Travis Hunter. If you're in a need of a Travis Hunter, you trade up for that because you know what you're getting.
Right. Yeah, look. There's standout players later in the first round draft that you could justify trading up for. Mason Graham is a top 10 pick, and you cannot justify it. I don't see what you see on film or what you see about his body that could justify trading up for him. I think let the team that takes him take him and see what happens. I don't see it. So let's move on here. Let's get back to a little bit of Brock Purdy. Let's talk about the real trade value. Let's be as realistic as possible. Other NFL teams, what are they willing to give to acquire Brock Purdy?
I think
it's interesting. Sorry, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that
no calls have been made to the 49ers to acquire Brock Purdy. Now, he hasn't requested a trade. He hasn't made it clear that he wants to be traded. So it's kind of understandable, but at the same time, you'd think a couple phone calls would come in for him. I found it interesting.
I think that's the biggest concern is the fact that nobody has called for Brock Purdy. And I can tell you the reason. It's not because of Brock Purdy's play, and it's not because what Brock Purdy brings to the team. It has everything to do with the fact that if you trade for Brock Purdy, it means that you have to be willing to pay him $55 to $60 million. That's the facts. It's not that there isn't a need for Brock Purdy in the NFL or that there is an interest outside of the 49er building. There's plenty of interest. It's just teams are unwilling to pay him what he's looking for, which gives the 49ers leverage and more reason to not pay him the amount that he's asking. So the 49ers have to decide right now that if you are to trade him, you would have to be able to convince another team that he's worth 55 to 60 mil. And I think that's the biggest hurdle.
Or take a bargain. That's the other option. They're either going to have to take something that Brock Purdy's worth more. So they're going to have to take a bargain, but I don't know what happened there. So, but at the end of the day, sorry, at the end of the day, where was I? Brock Purdy, you'd either have to convince an NFL team or take a bargain of what he's worth. I kind of lost my train of thought here. I was going somewhere with this. But.
Yeah, well, I think the 49ers' best thing that they could do is get Brock Purdy at a $45 million contract. And the way they're going to do that is by showing him that there's no trade interest. And let's be honest, it's not because of his play. It's because of what he's asking. So if the 49ers can convince him of that, I think that gives the Niners leverage to get them where they want him at. And then the 49ers have the ability of signing him at 45 or deciding to trade him. I think if the 49ers get him at 45, they're going to sign him. And he's going nowhere. So the truth is the chances of trading Brock Purdy are so slim because like I say, the only way you're trading him is if there's a trade partner willing to pay him what he's asking right now.
Right. And a part of me feels bad for Brock Purdy, man. He's probably sitting there like, okay, why did Tua get paid this? Why the hell did Trevor Lawrence get paid this? What the hell do I have to do to get paid this? I hope Brock Purdy gets paid $60 million, just not on the 40.
I think the only difference is between those names that you just mentioned is that they paid them first and realized that was a mistake. So those franchises did the Niners a favor in the sense that they showed when you pay a guy that's not worth that kind of money, what happens to your franchise. And what you've seen is Miami, ever since that contract was signed, has gone on a decline. And they're going to start losing some key components, which you saw, Holland gone for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And, Tyreek Hill is probably out the door, and that might be for different reasons, especially what just came out today, a domestic dispute.
Yeah.
So the Dolphins have issues outside of Tua, but Tua is their biggest issue, and that's being his contract. And he's not an elite quarterback, and he's getting paid like one. So is Trevor Lawrence. So is Dak Prescott. And when you do that, you're putting your franchise in a situation where you just can't win. I mean, the best they could do is get to the playoffs. But if you look at all three of those teams, none of them made the playoffs. Obviously, Dak got hurt, but they weren't looking good with Dak anyway.
No. So what is actually going to happen? What is the prediction here? This is the hardest thing to call. This is the craziest.
Honestly, I think they settle at $45 million.
I don't see it. I think Purdy's going to stick to it. Like I said, those quarterbacks, regardless of what happened, they're getting paid that money. And I'm better than those quarterbacks, so I want to be paid that money. It's not rocket science. If I'm Brock Purdy, I'm sticking to that too.
Well, it's very simple. If you're going to stick to that, we're going to trade you, and we can't find a trading partner willing to pay you. So, he loses his leverage right there. If that is true, because the 49ers have made it very clear that they are unwilling to pay him $55 million. And the reason why I say that is that's what he's asking, and the deal is not done. So if the Niners were willing to pay what he's asking, it should be all signed and dead and done with. But because of what he's asking, it's not, which it tells you that the 49ers are not willing to pay him what his expectations are.
Right, but okay, if he came out publicly and said, I want to be traded, did the calls start coming in? Do you believe that the calls are going to, come on.
I don't.
The calls will start coming.
I don't believe that. I really do not believe that. Not for that money. I don't.
Come on, Sal. There's an NFL team out there that'll make a mistake. We see it every single year.
Okay, well, the 49ers announced no trading, or nobody's called them for trade. And the reason why they did that is because they must be listening in for phone calls, as in they're willing to listen to phone calls, but they haven't got any.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a scheme to start getting phone calls, is what you're thinking.
It's very possible, but at the same time, generally, when a player and a team are in a dispute over a contract, think of back when Brandon Ayuk was same problem. Teams start reaching out and offering them trades because they're willing to pay the receiver or the quarterback or whoever it may be. In this situation, it's been a little bit different. Nobody has called, and it's because of what he's asking. It's very clear to me that no other team is willing to pay him what he's asking, and that's the reason why the calls haven't come. Now, if you told the rest of the NFL Brock Purdy is looking for $40 million and the 49ers were struggling to sign him, just imagine how many teams would have called by now without the ask. So this is how you know.
Yeah, G Boom says Purdy should be thankful to even get 45 mil. If he waits till next year, he probably won't even get half of that. So I somewhat agree. The number will go down. I don't know if it'll drop below 45. I think if he plays this year, it'll cement the number at 45. That is what you're worth. I don't know if it'll drop below that. He'd have to have a pretty bad season. I could see a decently bad season coming out of Purdy because I think he will be pushing the ball a lot more than he's used to. So it's kind of going to be a new world for him, which is going to show his true value a little bit more. But I don't think it could drop below 45. We know at the end of the day, Purdy is a good player. So
He
that's
he he is a good player. I mean, I've said this time and time again that Brock Purdy brings a lot of stuff to the table. There's certain quarterbacks that are calm in a pocket. He's calm in the pocket. Um, the thing that I love about Purdy is he throws on time. So like if it's a zone, he's gonna find the window. The ball will come out on time prior to the cut. The guy will turn around. The ball's already in the air. He's that type of quarterback.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, his downfall and the ability to his pocket presence, his ability to buy time, extend plays, and even have to, if he needs to run, he can run. All those things are positives.
mhm,
But where his game comes in question to me, and it's not even his fault, it's his given ability, and that's he's a little bit short and he
yeah,
doesn't have the strongest arm. And those two things create a problem because if you can't see where you're throwing, you know, he said 60% of the time he sees where he's throwing and 40% he doesn't. So if the 49ers don't play the scheme of the New Orleans Saints back in the day when Drew Brees was playing, I used to love watching the Saints play because it was funny. The old line would make lanes literally where the ball's going to go. So you'd see like that C gap if he's looking on the left side or the B gap on the left side of the field or the right side of the field, wherever he was looking, it felt like they were just like making a lane for him to throw through. And that was a design by the New Orleans Saints to make it easier on Drew Brees, even though Drew Brees' chin would be way up in the air trying to see over an O line. And that's why I
yeah,
always feel like whenever you're dealing with a shorter quarterback, defensive coordinators understand something very simple. You blitz that guy in his face, or you bring pressure in the A gap and B gap, and it causes big problems for little guys in the pocket, like a Drew Brees, like a Brock Purdy. See, the other thing about Brock Purdy that I want to talk about is his arm strength. The arm strength is an issue. The reason why Brock Purdy has to throw early and on time, sure, it's a great thing, but the reason is because his arm strength is not exactly. It's not even probably top 20 in the league. It might be even worse. There's some backups that have more arm strength. I'm sure of it. So
yeah.
he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when it comes to arm strength. It forces him to throw early to be on time.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And a lot of Purdy's success, even leading into the future, will have to come from Kyle Shanahan helping him out. Shorter quarterbacks need a certain scheme, 100% true, like Drew Brees got, and they need help from their coach, which is why it was almost hitting the nail with the hammer when Jed York said Purdy's a top 10 quarterback with Kyle Shanahan.
I was just going to say that. And,
Yeah,
you know, him saying that, he's basically trying to tell those who do not understand, or maybe he's talking directly to Brock Purdy and his agent. But basically, what he's trying to say is, I agree with you. You're a top 10 quarterback right now on the San Francisco 49ers. I just
mhm,
don't believe you're truly a top 10 quarterback off the San Francisco 49ers. And the reason being is because one, the 49ers have one of the best offensive minds in the game, calling the plays and making life easier on a Brock Purdy. We've talked about this before. Last season, maybe he leaned on Purdy a little bit too much, almost trying to find out what he truly has there, maybe. And he lost his creativity a little bit in terms of Kyle Shanahan. But we've seen the old Kyle Shanahan years past, what he did with Brock Purdy and how he made life easy on him. And that's what made him top 10. He's probably only being considered out of the top 10 this past season because of the decline in his play. It had a lot to do with injuries around him, but it had a lot to do with the play calling. The play calling leaned on the quarterback a little bit more, and you've seen a little bit of a decline.
yeah, 100%. So I know we got Purdy ranked from 12 to borderline 10 in terms of ranking the league. Is that with Kyle Shanahan, or is that just pick him up, drop him in a team, and that's what he is?
No, I'm a firm believer that Brock Purdy is a top 15 quarterback in this league. He's, you know, there's certain players that just have it. Brock Purdy does have it, but don't kid yourself. Brock Purdy is not an elite quarterback. He's borderline elite with Kyle Shanahan. He's a damn good quarterback in this league, regardless, but he's borderline elite when he's being coached by Kyle Shanahan, making life easy on him.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to this. I found this pretty interesting. Jed York accused of penny pinching. So he's being cheap with Brock Purdy, and his response was, "I've been called worse." And he had a bit of a longer response, but I mean, I find it pretty funny that you're calling somebody cheap when they're negotiating. I mean, that's the job of negotiation. That's the whole point. You don't want to just pay a player everything he wants. So
No, I mean, you can call him cheap all you want. I'm good with it because it's fun to see the 49ers truly negotiate the contract and not just give the guy what he wants. And this is the type of contract that can make the Niners good for a long time, or it can make the 49ers very bad for a long time. If the 49ers go and copy what the Dallas Cowboys did, you're going to see a struggling team for a long time. And I remember seeing Dak Prescott on the sideline saying, "Man, we suck." He got caught saying that on a hot mic.
yeah,
And that's what happens. If you want to be the highest paid quarterback in the league and you're not the guy that should be the highest paid quarterback in the league, that's what you're going to get. You're going to, the team is going to need to rely on you to win games.
yeah.
And Brock Purdy is not that guy that you need to rely on to win games, and neither is Dak Prescott. These are good pieces of a puzzle. They're not the puzzle. So as soon as you lean on them too much and you go pay them that kind of money, the surrounding players decline, the quality goes down, and now you're relying strictly on the guy's arm. And, you see a struggling team. And that's what you saw in Dallas. And this year, because of injuries, it almost felt like that's what the team would look like if you paid Brock Purdy.
Right. There's so few quarterbacks where you could just give them the money and tell them to go win. Like you could literally count them on your fingertips. And Dak Prescott's not one of them. Brock Purdy's not one of them. And so the debate is hilarious. I mean, you could call Jed York cheap all you want, but has he been cheap the past 5-6 years? We've been going to the playoffs every year, going to the Super Bowl or NFC Championship every year with the best roster in the league, hands down. No,
Right.
He's not cheap at all. Jed York is a pretty damn good owner.
No, the 49ers have been the best team to cheer for the last, outside of the Kansas City Chiefs. Who's been better to cheer for than the 49ers? I guess the Eagles as well. Those are the three best teams in the league for a while now.
Yeah.
And to call him cheap is crazy talk because, it's like you said, he's put some crazy rosters together that he's willing to pay for.
Yeah, he's just being stingy with his money when he should be. Now's the perfect time, Jed. If you're ever going to be cheap, now's the time.
Right. Yeah, like the 49ers have even brought in rental players like Chase Young. They paid D Ford quite a bit when they brought him over. And they paid Hargraves. They've paid players to come and help us win. Leonard Floyd last year, they're not shy to go out and try to win a Super Bowl. It's just they fell short, and there's many reasons why they've fallen short. Last year, like the year in Philadelphia, not last year, or not 2 years ago, the year before that, 3 years ago. Wow, it's crazy how time it just flies. But
injury.
He gets injured. He gets injured in the NFC Championship game. You don't even have a quarterback to finish the game. You have a quarterback to hand off the ball, and that's it. Right. That year felt like the best Niner team, and that happened. Mm-hmm. And they easily could have won last year, the 2 years ago against KC, and they fell short. You are playing against Patrick Mahomes, and if he gets the ball to go win a game, and he's in that situation, chances are he's going to go do that. And that's what's happened to us. So the 49ers have, lost fourth quarter leads twice to him. And you just cannot have him in a position where he can come and win a game late in the game. The 49ers have made that mistake twice, and he's capitalized on both opportunities.
Yeah, so is it a real thing that, the Niners have, had so many players that played in big-time games, Super Bowl games, and when you start backing up these losses at those type of games, like I'm specifically referring to George Kittle. We saw it. We saw his demeanor the first Super Bowl loss. He's sitting there on the sideline saying, "I will be back here, yada yada yada, and nothing's gonna stop." After the second Super Bowl loss was just like straight devastation. Like it just did not feel the same. The whole team felt like broken almost. So this quote unquote rebuild was a thing that needed to happen because you need fresh life. You need fresh meat that's hungry, that wants to go win. So I feel like that could be a little lingering thing in the 49er front office that is making them think about trading these sort of players. Like, again, though, George Kittle's a Hall of Famer, so how badly is that going to affect his play? But then again, once Trent Williams didn't play as well last year, we're easy to say that, well, he's not on a competing team, so he might not have wanted to win as badly. We could see that out of George Kittle.
I don't know. I'm the way I see it is George Kittle is a Hall of Fame player every time he takes a snap. That's the way he plays the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree that the locker room was not the same after that loss. You've seen players, they were affected by the loss. Debo Samuel never came back the same. He put on weight. It was almost like he felt like, okay, the Super Bowl runs are over here. Trent Williams got hurt, and that you can't put on a player for getting hurt. But the 49ers were just not the same in the locker room. And obviously not having the heart and soul of the defense last year outside of Fred Warner is Dre Greenlaw. And, when Dre Greenlaw came back, you felt a spark. And all the more reason why you don't let those type of players go. So I put George Kittle in the same boat as you put Fred Warner and the same boat that you put Dre Greenlaw. These are the type of players you would definitely retain, and you do not even entertain losing. This is just the way you build a team. If you're building a team to go to the Super Bowl, you build them around those type of players. Those are the type of players that are like almost generational talents that they will win you Super Bowls through them. Sure, we've come short twice, and they've been on both teams, but you also got there by players like that. And you're just going to let them out the door to go get a younger guy. I know we're in that mode right now of rebuild, but every team needs a few veterans that are next level veterans, and that's what we have. To give them away, it just sounds, I don't know. To me, it's like blasphemy. You just go trade away George Kittle, you let go of Dre Greenlaw. You've basically gotten rid of your identity is the way I see it.
Yeah, the whole offseason so far, letting go that many starters was hard enough. I feel like letting George Kittle go would just be the ultimate fuck you to the fan base. That'd be too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I honestly believe that George Kittle deserves the $20 million. It's not that crazy as long as you don't pay Brock Purdy what he's asking. You bring Brock Purdy down to a reasonable number, anywhere between 40 and 45 million. And then you can pay your George Kittles. You can get your draft picks that you ultimately need. And next offseason is an exciting one because you get a lot of money back that you've lost here in the cap hit. And the 49ers have some spending money going into next offseason. So this season, I think, is all about winning maybe a wild card game due to the schedule. And, the way the defense looks right now is pretty scary. So I know the draft's going to address that, or at least attempt to. And then the 49ers can go uphill from there. And it could be a quick rebuild. Same thing you've seen in St. Louis. Finding the 49ers in the playoffs already coming into this end of this next season. And then looking to really make a push the following year. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, it's not out of the question. The Eagles just did it. The Eagles last year completely fell apart, and then they won the Super Bowl. So
right. But I want to say one thing. Let's say the 49ers do start entertaining trading Brock Purdy. If the 49ers were willing to trade Brock Purdy for TJ Watt, let's say, and TJ Watt comes in, what's his salary cap hit? I want to say it's like 20 some odd million. It's got to be like 21. So if he comes in at that cap hit, a lot of people would say, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense because the 49ers are in a rebuilding mode and that's a 30-year-old player. And that's a fair argument. But the 49ers defense goes crazy with those two edge players that we would have. Mm-hmm. And then they addressed in the draft the D tackle position. And they would have to draft probably – it would be interesting where the 49ers would draft a quarterback. Would they do a Milrow in the third round or late second? Is that possible? I think so.
Or Mac Jones.
Or they ride out Mac Jones is another option.
All right. The biggest question mark with TJ Watt is he's 30 years old. He's not going to be a rental player. I mean, the whole thing that's going down with the Steelers right now is he's fighting for an extension. So if he were to get traded, that team would have to offer him an extension.
Right.
Otherwise, he won't get traded. So
the only way the 49ers become a trading partner is if they're willing to trade Brock Purdy, which is their biggest expense, which would mean that they would go young at quarterback or stick with Mac Jones Both options are cheap.
But then that money goes towards TJ Watt. And
Right.
it's going to be a hefty number. I mean, the market is not cheap right now. I could imagine he wants to be the highest paid player as well. So I can imagine $40 million going to TJ Watt. Is that worth it for a 30-year-old player when we're trying to get younger?
No. And it's not worth it for any team, really, to pay him $40 million. There's not a lot of teams that could line up and pay TJ Watt $40 million at 30 years old. Because a lot of these, the best suitor for TJ Watt getting paid $40 million is a team that is on a young quarterback who's a good young quarterback, like a Washington or a Texans team where they've yet to pay the quarterback. That's really the only trade partner they could come up with. But at the same time, to pay a guy a 30-year-old guy $40 million, it better be a short contract, no longer than 2 years. And if he's good with that, then I could see either of those teams being interested in him.
Yeah, but the Niners. So
no,
we agree we don't see it.
It's a reach for the Niners to even consider trading Brock Purdy. Never mind getting TJ Watt and paying him that crazy amount of money.
Right.
But it's definitely an option in the sense that the 49ers may not pay Purdy what he's looking for. So then you have to look at what is the best alternative if you don't pay Brock Purdy. I was a fan of the 49ers getting a player by the name of Milton, and the Cowboys jumped all over it and went and got him, despite having Dak Prescott getting $60 million. So how the Cowboys were urgent to go and grab him while they're paying a guy $60 million, and the 49ers are in a contract dispute with a Brock Purdy and never went out and even considered. They weren't even on the list. So I thought it was strange. I understand that, the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan likes Mac Jones, and that's why we went and got Mac Jones. But if the 49ers were willing to trade Brock Purdy, I think that would have been an option. It just all signs show me that the 49ers want to sign him. It's just going to come down to the number.
Well, yeah, they missed the best opportunity they had. Man, I wouldn't have been mad. If they don't know for sure yet whether he's going to come down to their number, they should have jumped all over the Milton thing. The Milton thing to Dallas makes zero sense. I read an article today. The whole reason Milton wanted out is exactly what we predicted. He thought he was better than Drake May, but he wasn't getting a fair opportunity. He wasn't going to get a chance to start. So then you go
again, but then he goes to Dallas, and I don't see how he wanted to be in Dallas. So he's almost saying, "I'll just beat out Dak," but you couldn't take Drake May's job. You're not taking Dak at $60 million.
You can't. It's impossible. So
no,
it made no sense. But the Niners missed the boat on that. That would have been the dream scenario. But they still have a scenario where Brock Purdy trade still makes sense, and that is Milroe. That could be Sanders at 11. If we want to go that way, Sanders had a strong pro day. So I don't know. I can't wait for the draft.
I would be very angry if the 49ers drafted Shedeur Sanders. That's not the direction that I think they should be going. I think the 49ers have a Brock Purdy who can, buy time, extend plays with his legs, and run for first downs when needed. And I'm not saying Shedeur can't do that. Shedeur is not the craziest athlete. He's not the generational type quarterback that you should be excited about. He really is a good college quarterback, and we're going to find out what he can do in the NFL. I feel like that's where he is. So to put your franchise on a Shedeur Sanders right now is not the move for me. I would prefer going if the 49ers were trading Brock Purdy, and they would get some good picks for that. And you could get, I think Milroe would work with, I really do. His style would work with Shanahan. It's basically what they wanted Trey Lance to be. That's what I see Milroe. He's what we thought Trey Lance would be. Trey Lance was a horrible pick from day one. I hated the pick. I was never for the pick. And, that's the reason why I think Milroe is a good fit, because he does everything they wanted Trey Lance to be.
Well, he has the mobility. He has the big arm that Trey Lance had. He showed more accuracy than Trey Lance ever did. So, yeah, Milroe would have been fun, but that's not going to happen, obviously, now. I don't know. I wouldn't mind a shake up to the organization. I wouldn't mind Brock Purdy like a big splash on trade day, on draft day. I wouldn't be opposed to that if it has to do with Brock Purdy being traded.
I think the only way you're going to see a Brock Purdy trade is if a team is, like I say, willing to take the amount that he's asking. And that's got to be between 50 and 60 million. Because the 49ers, in my opinion, have made it pretty clear they're not willing to pay it. You can call the owner a penny pusher, and he'll tell you he's been called worse. He's not going to be offended by it because it looks like the 49ers have made up their mind that they're not going to pay him anywhere in that range. So the 49ers are going to stick to their guns. It's very apparent to me now. The more this goes on, it's very obvious. The other thing you got to keep in mind too, is Brock Purdy willing to continue holding out and giving Mac Jones first team reps in OTAs because it's not too far away? And I just don't believe he's willing to do that. He's going to give Mac Jones first string, reps at OTAs while he sits there and fights for $5 million. I just don't believe that $5 million should mean that much to Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy gets paid $45 million, I think that contract gets signed tomorrow. If he wants to hold on for this $50 to $60 million range, this contract dispute continues and Mac Jones gets a chance to flourish in a 49er offense. And I'm not saying that Mac Jones is the answer, but what I am saying is it's not a good thing for a quarterback to watch another guy that started in the league, a potential starter, not a potential starter. He's a decent player. Yeah.
I mean, yes and no. Like if I'm Brock Purdy, I don't feel threatened by Mac Jones, especially when you're talking to you're talking to the organization about millions and millions of dollars. So I don't know how much heat that's really going to apply to Brock Purdy. I think it's more about Brock Purdy just wants to be there with the team. Whether Mac Jones is there or not, Brock Purdy's the type of guy where he wants to be there day one, building that chemistry, taking as much reps as possible.
The thing is, the Brock Purdy that the 49ers sell and the Brock Purdy that he sells of himself, like the last show he was on was a religious show. He makes himself appear as like a really good guy. And the 49ers always mention how good of a guy he is.
Right.
I just don't see how that works with the same guy that's fighting over $5 million on $45 million. I just don't see it. So eventually he's going to fold.
I think it's more of his. Hey, he could be a really nice guy. If your agent's an asshole, then your agent's an asshole, and that has nothing to do with you. I think that's
right. That's true. That's true, but he'll step in, especially when we're talking OTAs and first reps and all this stuff. Eventually, he should step in.
Yeah, I can see him telling his agent behind closed doors, just get it done before OTAs. And I don't know how much of that has to do with Mac Jones, but that's definitely a possibility. But
I will say this: if the deal does not get done before OTAs, the chances of Brock Purdy being traded goes up. Again, though, Brock Purdy is going to have to come down to reality and understand that no team is willing to pay you that money, including the 49ers. He's going to have to come down and settle at the number that the Niners are wishing for, and then they would probably sign him. But if he's unwilling, now the 49ers are going to have to shop him at the rate that he's asking, and that's where the challenge will come in. Hopefully there's a trade suitor. I don't think there is. I think that already would have happened. Our offers would have already came in, and they haven't.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's everything we got for today. Catch us on the next one. I guess it won't be too long. We're going to try to start doing one every day, if not every other day. So,
yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if there's any future topics that you want us to speak of, just drop a comment and we'll try to get back to you on that and speak on whatever it is that you're hoping us to speak on. Until next time, take it easy.